going on, lifers? Welcome to another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'm your host, Jake Thomas, and today we've got a great guest coming to you live and in person by way of Austin, Texas at his abode, his chilly respite. He is the owner and founder of Fjord Cold Plunges and Chillers. He's been a good friend, a new friend, and someone I've really gotten acquainted with and had been hanging out a lot with since the summer here in Austin. He's welcomed me with open arms, but he's a man of faith, a man of principles, a man of good character, so someone I've really kind of clicked up with, and I'll let him tell you more about himself and his story. But without further ado, Mr. Stephen Haynes, welcome to the show.
There we go. Thanks for having me.
For sure. It's great to be here with you, man.
My pleasure.
Well, like I told everyone, we're at your place. You know, we just got out of a 20-minute session in the cold tub, the longest I've done myself, which is a challenge in itself. Yeah. So that's easy to talk about. So maybe let's start there and tell us why you got into, contrast therapy and building chillers and cold tubs.
Yeah. So my career since college has been strategy consulting. So I did about 16 years working in corporate, if you will. And it was a great career for me. I really enjoyed it, and it played to a lot of my strengths. And about 2 years ago, I started to feel, this entrepreneurial itch. I wanted to do something different. And I thought, if I don't do it now, then might as well take the risk at this point in my life. And came up with a couple business ideas. I wrote a couple business plans. And while I was going through that process, I wanted to own a cold plunge. So I went out, looked at what was in the market. Everything was, 5, 6K. And, I was at that time, I was like, I'm a DIY type of person. I was like, I'm going to build my own cold plunge. So I bought a bunch of, materials, paid retail for all of them, and just built a cold plunge. And started having friends over and entertaining in the cold plunge, and realized, so many people are enjoying this. And it was just a fun bonding thing to do with my friends. And, pretty soon one of my friends said, can you make one of these for me? I'd like to buy one. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll make you one, Made him one, sold it to him super cheap. Sold it to another friend, and then eventually that kept going, and I'm starting to get orders from people I don't know, from their friends. And I sort of developed that out into an experiment where I said, you know what, I'm actually making money from this. This is something I'm truly passionate about, is health, wellness, biohacking. I had been on my own path towards my own better health since maybe 7 years ago, when my dad had a heart attack, and it really woke me up. And I thought, I look healthy, I feel healthy, but I should probably get my blood checked and just make sure I am. And that sort of kicked off this whole thing around biohacking. So I thought, it's something I'm passionate about. And when I decided to start the business, I needed to give myself, as an entrepreneur, a first-time entrepreneur, psychological safety. And I thought, what I'm going to do is view this as an experiment for 1 year. I'm going to go ahead and this will be really fun. If nothing else, I'll learn a lot. And I certainly learned a lot in that first year. Made a lot of mistakes, wasted tens of thousands of dollars making the mistakes, and would have plenty of things to share to a new entrepreneur just based off all that. And now we're finishing up our second year of business, and we really had a turning point in that second year of business. One of our first kind of big catalysts was actually being at Hack Your Health.
Oh, cool.
Where I met you.
Yeah.
Awesome conference in Austin, Texas, a lot of attendees, and I almost wanted to back out of that conference. It was $3,000 to have a booth, and I thought, I don't really know, plus it was on my birthday weekend. So I thought, I really want to celebrate my birthday, not be at this conference all day. Yeah. And I was so glad I did. We ended up selling about 14 cold plunges.
Wow.
From people that we met at that conference.
Wow.
And relationships that developed from there. And the business really kind of took a turn at that point too, which actually also aligns with when we decided to go with American-made machines. And that was a huge, huge move for us. It basically doubled our cost of goods sold.
Wow. COGS.
We had to raise the price point to make it make sense. And ironically, the business took off after we did that, and kind of separated ourselves from the field with quality machines, because of all the horror stories out there of all the competitors, even the big names, using Chinese-made equipment.
Yep.
And they were just failing on people. So I've replaced a lot of people's brand name cold plunges with my products, especially in situations where they're getting a lot of use, so that there's less downtime and people don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So 16 years of consulting. That had to give you a lot of experience, though, even though it's not where you want it to be. Like you said, you kind of wanted to delve into this entrepreneurial sector or entrepreneur venture.
Yeah.
But 16 years of building up a career and obviously familiarity, comfort, experience, I don't know, 10-year legacy. Why would you leave that?
Yeah. I guess just to have a moment of gratefulness for that season of my life, it allowed me to see the world. I was covering oil and gas clients in a bunch of multinational companies and really, traveled to tons of countries and got to experience a lot of the world that way, which was an education in and of itself.
Yeah.
And the company I was with was actually a Swedish company. It was a boutique. And one of the things that was great about it is we were small enough to be really picky about hiring.
Nice.
So all the people I worked with were the smartest people from other consulting firms. We would just collect them. And if they weren't great, they would attrit within 6 weeks because everything was so visible and transparent. Yeah. So I loved being surrounded by super smart people. And thinking about making the pivot for me was really around, seeing the culture as my company grew. I think when I started there was 400 people, and when I left, there's like 2,000 people.
Yep.
So I was friends with the owners and all the seniors, and kind of grew up with them in the ranks and stuff like that during my tenure. And then I think COVID changed some things. We started really going remote. The travel kind of stopped. Some of the allure of the industry really changed.
Yeah.
And for me, it just felt like a good time personally to make a shift.
Did your father's health have anything to do with it too?
My dad had something to do with it, but it wasn't really around his health in this case. It was more around the fact that my dad, since he was young, has been a serial entrepreneur.
Oh, cool.
So he's kind of been a mentor to me and encouraged me to take chances and do my own thing. And as I started the business, he was instrumental in giving me a lot of advice and direction.
Oh, amazing. What was his entrepreneurial interest, or like before, like career path and whatnot?
Man, he's got a lot of things. He's a CPA by background, and he has an accounting practice. He does property tax consulting. He has an agriculture business, so he grew up on a farm. Cool. I'm actually the first generation on my dad's family side to not grow up on a farm.
Now the Texas A&M thing makes sense.
So I became a city boy somehow, and but he still raises hundreds of cattle.
Wow,
takes
cool.
care of them, grass finished, grass fed. He's into it.
That's awesome.
So, he's got a number of other businesses in real estate and stuff like that too.
Wow, so you definitely took a lot of homage and influence from your father then to be able to do this, like you said, and for him to, that's got to feel good too, knowing you got that kind of security and support going into something, obviously having walked away again from a career, comfort, familiarity, a season of your life, like you said, as much of an interest as this is, it's nice to have the support of a loved one and someone obviously you look up to like that too.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, that's awesome. Well, what about like before the consultant season of life? Who were you like, undergrad, college years, even before that as a kid? Like, what were your interests? What'd you get into? What made you tick?
Yeah, it's funny because ever since I was young, I loved the water. Mm-hmm. We had a swimming pool. We'd go to the public swimming pool. We'd find creeks to swim in and fish in. Boats to get on the water. So I've always been attracted to water, and very much still am. Part of the reason I still live in Austin and pay a premium for this neighborhood is to be so close to Barton Springs Pool
For sure.
and the river.
For sure.
But man, as a kid, dude, I was just one of those people. I remember in school, I tried to surround myself with the funniest people. I didn't care if they were the most popular or if they were total nerds, because I had friends that ran that whole gamut. As long as they had a great sense of humor, we made each other laugh and were able to do stupid things.
Yeah.
That was kind of the way I grew up, and never really put a tremendous amount of intentional effort into focusing and stressing over school and grades. I ended up making good enough grades, to get into A&M, but it was really, I was really focused on relationships, which is kind of funny because I look at my priorities now and it's totally reflective of that, know. I'm like a relationships and community first person and then business.
Yeah.
But the great part is there's a beautiful synergy between the two, when you show up and you care more about the relationship and the person than you do about the transaction.
That's amazing, because that's how we met, through a mutual friend, saying you guys should hook up. It had to do with, your product and us being at that event where we were both like-minded and had similar interests, but it was never a pitch interaction, or it was never like, a meeting of minds based on something transactional. And since then, you've only invited me to do things, whether it's a 311 concert or the Fjord Wellness Days, or to go out and meet people the other night in Austin. So for you to say that, I'm like, wow, it goes that far, that back. It goes back that far. That's who you are. That's what you're about. And it's like, it's very still obviously representative, because that's the only person I know you as. I mean, I've only known you for a few months, but for the fact that that's how you've been and who you've been for the majority of your life, I'm like, wow, that's pretty true and telling. So yeah, I concur to what you're saying, that you're still like that. So what, 2020, it's a weird time in life, in the world. You got to have a lot of competition, obviously, out there in what you're doing. You talked about some of the things that set your product apart. So what was that like for you, exploring like a very, it was blue ocean before 2020, but then it became red ocean very fast.
Correct.
Right? So it was pretty open market space with not a lot of competition, but quickly got saturated with competition. So was your changing to American manufacturing really a big difference maker for you? And then like, how do you continue to be separatist from, competition in that sense?
Right. There is a lot of competition, and kind of putting on my consulting hat, you got to look at that.
So leveraging the 16-year season, right?
You got to look at that. And for me, that didn't dissuade me from pursuing this, because I just had a personal passion for the mental and physical benefits of cold water immersion, what it can do for people. And we can talk more about kind of what my story is around my experience with it.
Yeah.
But essentially, let me gather my train of thought to edit this out. What was the question, Jake?
Was going into blue ocean, or rather going into blue ocean 2020, but then seeing how quickly it became red ocean.
Right.
And then diversifying kind of your value proposition by becoming American made.
Right.
Kind of put you back into blue ocean in a sense. So like, what is that like, and revolving around saturated market, competitive market space? Where did you find, I guess, competitive and comparative advantages?
Saturated market. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
A little dad humor there.
Yeah.
I love dad humor. But no, like there is a lot.
I'm just trying to sound smart, like I went to business school, like to make it somewhat understandable.
So one of the good things is, as more competitors have entered the market, there is like this education among just the masses, and anybody that's listening to Huberman or Rogan or Peter Attia or Susanna Soberg, that are starting to like wake up to this idea. I actually think it's good that more cold plunges are out there and more people are doing it.
Totally.
Because it wakes people up to, oh my gosh, this is a tool in the health tool belt that we haven't been using.
Yeah. Same thing with coaches. Like, I don't care how many coaches there are, health, influencers or enthusiasts. Good. There's a lot of people that care about prioritizing things that are good for. Great.
Right.
Have more.
So I almost think that the market size continues to grow, at least at the same pace that the suppliers grow.
Nice.
But for me, I'm pretty focused on the customer and their experience with the product. And because I started this company, bootstrapped, self-funded, and small, a lot of my customers are people that I know personally. So I have a personal vested interest in them having a good experience.
Yeah.
And that's, one of the things that became really important, is I don't want to be, getting phone calls from people that are really having a bad experience with the product, like it's breaking or the pump stopped or something like that. And I'm not saying that like nothing ever could go wrong with any equipment. Surely it could, but I'm there to backstop it. But I just want to minimize that. So that is one of the main things that differentiates us, is being able to have machinery that is American made. And then from there, one of the things I'm excited about is we just launched a new product to the Fjord lineup called Fjord Luxe, which is our customers were asking for a higher end aesthetic, more of an elevated, an elevated look.
Yeah.
We started off just offering an inflatable tub shell, but then once we raised our price point, because of the American made machinery and so forth, we've reached into the $6,000 range. And if somebody can afford that, they probably have a pretty manicured backyard.
Yeah.
And they want something back there that looks permanent and nice. So we just rolled out the acrylic, beautiful kind of acrylic white tubs, and pair that with our same equipment and filtration system. And since we did that, nearly all new customers since then have opted for that product. So that's something that, and to my knowledge, no one else out there is doing American-made equipment with an acrylic tub, which seems like, why not?
Yeah.
So, but it's a great combo.
And I can speak from personal experience of the attention to detail and white glove service and availability and passion and concern you have for customers, because a customer of yours is a client of mine, a mutual friend of ours, and not that she had complications, but just installation, setup, help, little things, quirks like, hey, check this out. Should I do this? Shouldn't I do that? How to turn this on? How to use the ionizer? And you were Johnny on the spot with punctuality and responsiveness and all that stuff. And hey, send me pictures of this, a video of that, and describe it and break it down. And I was like, this is amazing. So to me, that's huge value to be able to provide to someone. Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
You mentioned about it mattering a lot to you, and that it's something deeply connected with what you believe in, and not just providing service, but community. And since I've met you, and now I've come to several of your Fjord days that you have here at your home, number one, so you literally invite people into your home. You're bringing a group of people together that are like-minded, that are doing breath work, that are doing yoga, listening to a DJ, getting in the tubs. You also got a sauna out here and a couple of other tubs. It was, they've been some of the coolest days that I've been around, as far as everybody's sober, everybody's still dancing to music, still having great conversation. When did that start? Was that right away? I know you've only said it's been second year of the company, but was that something right off the bat you were like, hey, this is going to be part of who we are and what we stand for?
In our first year, we had a couple of activations over here, but the actual official monthly Fjord Wellness Days started, I believe, in March of this year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've just been doing one per month since then. Wow. And every time I learn something that I can do better for the next one, we kind of dialed it in at this point, and we've built a community to where now it's like we'll hit a cap and we'll run out of space and run out of tickets. So it's really been fun.
Yeah, well, I can say as a frequenter that it's a great time, man. So what do you miss, like the old career, consulting, running around, traveling? What came with that? Do you miss that, or do you, are you here for good doing this?
The good part is I don't fully have to miss it. I still have a relationship with my old company, and they'll mercenary me in 4 times a year, 5 times a year to pick up projects. I just did one in Connecticut a couple months ago, and I got another one in January. Nice. So I still get to keep my skills sharp and do something that I love doing and passionate about doing, yet it's much more on my own terms. When you're full-time at a management consulting firm at a senior level, if anybody out there is doing that, it's pretty intense. There's a tremendous amount of pressure, and none of your clients are talking to each other, which means they're all giving you the deadline at the same time. And you just have to deal with it. And so, it's roller coasters of up and down. In the consulting, field. For me, that worked really well, because I would rather have a peak period where I'm in the flow state, working really hard and making social sacrifices, and then have a lull, kind of the down part of the roller coaster where you've got a lot more time and you are able to exercise some freedom. So I got little tastes of what that freedom would be like during consulting. But yeah, man, I miss it. I like, there's stuff I miss, but I could not be happier with what I'm doing right now in my life, because what I do professionally and where my personal passions are like so intertwined now that I'm just living a consistent life day to day. And sometimes it's a really blurry line between, is this a sales meeting or is this just me and somebody cool hanging out?
Like we had one kind of almost kick off a few minutes ago and didn't mean for it to happen. Talking numbers and businesses. And like, are we talking about something of collaborative interests that have financial, monetary specs too?
You know this extremely well, like better than me, I'm sure. But since I've gotten involved in the wellness environment, so the wellness community in Austin, this last couple of years, you'll meet people, and maybe there's like 6 or 7 people in Austin that are sort of the connectors, and you meet them, you all become friends, you realize you're all just normal people, and you all want to help each other. And so the story that I described about, you're just living your life and everything just kind of feels like you're just, doing your thing.
Yep.
And everyone else, the big entrepreneurs that I know that are doing it, they're doing it that way. They're not segmenting their lives out so much.
Yeah. Kind of not cliche, but if I'm an ignorant listener, viewer, and there's a guy on here that owns a cold plunge company, I'm fascinated to know, like, how often does this guy use it? What's his daily regimen like? Is he like an ice man? Like I would have this weird perception. I don't want to say it's weird, but I'd probably have a perception like this dude must be like a badass in the water. He's probably in it 10 times a day. Like, challenge to you, without selling your product or trying to sell your product, not that you ever really do, you just, like you said, you're just going to be in yourself. Without selling your product, tell us about your regiment with it, and like why, and then also like the benefits that you've seen and continue to see in your own life because of use of cold water immersion.
On a personal level, the most pronounced benefit, and I'll get into protocols, but the most pronounced benefit that I've realized from cold plunging is a benefit to my sleep. I've had a couple decades of issues with insomnia and waking up in the middle of the night, not getting enough deep sleep. I've been tracking my sleep with the Oura Ring. Yeah, baby. And so I'm watching the different levels of restorative sleep. And the days in which I do a real good proper cold plunge.
Like today,
when you and I did 20 minutes in the cold plunge, I was shivering for 10 of those. I will get more deep sleep, and my latency to fall asleep is faster. So for me, sleep was a very noticeable one. What's cool is I'm sure there's all these other invisible benefits that are more long-term that are playing out. But my protocols, I'm a person of variety. So I do change up my protocols. I change up the temperature and duration. But on average, something that I got into a pattern of doing is setting it at about 45 degrees, 44 to 45, and do about 5 minutes.
Nice.
Because I find after, a lot of people say 3 minutes. I find after 3, it's really easy to stay, a couple more minutes, make sure you get a good dose.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the protocol that I do. Funny story, I sold a cold plunge to a friend of mine once who's he's just a very competitive person, and he's big into ultra Ironman type stuff.
Nice.
And he also has been to like 4 or 5 in-person Tony Robbins conferences.
Okay.
So he's a big Tony Robbins fan. I knew this about him. And he bought this cold plunge from me. He said, well, how cold should I put it? How long should I go? What's my protocol? And I said, well, the Tony Robbins protocol is 57 degrees for 10 minutes a day. And he said, well, set mine to 56.
I like this guy.
Yeah, he's great.
So to that, like, now I'm playing the role of an ignorant consumer. I've never heard of you, never gotten in cold water. I wouldn't really want to do it. What do I do? Let's say somebody gifts me one of these things. Well, now what do I do with it? Where do I start? Because whether you like it or not, Stephen, you're an authority in this cold water immersion world. You're not just a person that owns a company, that runs a brand and has great wellness retreats essentially with people. It's like you're an authority in the space. So like whether you're prepared for that or not, like hate to break it to you, you are. So like people off the street see you owning this, doing what you're doing, they're gonna assume you know a lot about this sport, this activity, this venture. So like if I'm someone that comes to you and says, I don't know anything about this, where do I begin, man? I'm terrified of the water. I hate the cold, but I've heard a lot of good things about this. And in particular, I've heard a lot of good things about you and your company. Help me get into this. Where do I start?
I think first of all, I would just be super excited if someone had the desire to explore it. Because so many people think that they're afraid of cold water.
Yeah.
And I think it's great when people are brave enough to say, let's give it a try. I have first timers over here all the time, and I'm always impressed with their ability to get in there and tough it out. They'll get in for 3 or 4 minutes and do the same thing I was doing. But if I have any authority in the subject space, it's because I've done. Like I told you I'm into biohacking, and have been studying health for years, and I've added this to be the deepest domain that I try to study. So I've read a lot of the papers, the PubMed articles, listened to the experts and stuff like that. So I kind of know what the research says on different topics. But then I also pair that with, my own experience. There's nothing like having your own experience with cold water to figure out what works, what doesn't, what does it really feel like, what's going on in your mind. So if I was helping coach somebody through, their first cold plunge or trying to get into a routine, you would typically tell them, hey, start at a temperature that you can get into and stay in for, a minute. And the temperature needs to be uncomfortably cold to where when you get in, your initial reaction is, I kind of want to get out.
Yeah.
That makes sure that you're getting a cold shock response to get the dose of all the benefits. So you could start there. A lot of people say start with cold showers, but frankly, cold running water on your body, I think, is harder than just getting into a cold plunge. So I would say start at, 60 degrees and see how you do for a minute. I can almost guarantee you the person that gets into 60-degree water for their first time, after a minute, they'll be chilled out and they'll say, this isn't so bad, and keep going.
Yeah.
And then just dial the temperature down to challenge yourself. That's part of the fun about cold plunging is
Sure.
it's just like the opportunity to push through walls and challenge yourself. So one thing that I heard somebody talk about something similar to this, and I kind of adapted it, which is the 4 walls to doing a cold plunge. They're all mental. So the first wall is the decision to get in. Just the decision to, I'm going to get in the water. Don't even touch the water yet. Second wall is stepping into the water. Third wall is total submersion.
Yeah.
After you're in the water for a while, at some point, which comes different for different people, you're going to be like, I want to get out.
Yeah.
I'm cold.
Yeah.
Maybe I get a little shiver. I'm cold. And then that's the 4th wall, and it's your opportunity to push through that wall and just stay a little bit longer. Challenge yourself for 1 more minute and just stay a little longer, and then wait for the shiver. Shiver is really key. When you start to shiver, it's like the low-tech way to know that you've gotten a good dose.
Oh, nice. I love that. 4 walls, all mental. That's cool. So the decision to get in, the decision to step in, total immersion, and then pushing through the last one of wanting to get out.
Yeah.
That's legit. Another, we were talking about this during recording the episode for your show, Freezing for a Reason, earlier today when we did our 20 minutes. And I don't know how you talked me into that, but that was awesome. But talking about how, of all the modalities, especially in biohacking, whether it's dry needling, compression, sauna, steam, to me, there's nothing like the cold, because it is the one that absolutely commands your attention, respect, concentration, presence, whatever you want to call it. You and I can get into the hottest sauna in the world, a sweat lodge. We can get in the most intense compression boots or suits or like lymphatic drainage kind of setups, the most intense type of brain tapping, dry needling, acupuncture, whatever, any type of science, pseudoscience, neuropathy, or neuroscience, whatever, any form of biohacking, the ultimates from the most extensive to the most minimalist and deeply soothing and therapeutic. There's nothing like getting into cold water compared to all those. Like nothing absolutely commands you to get in there. So back to the sauna thing, we just got into your sauna. We can get into a very hot sauna and be talkative and jovial and be like, hey, Steven, having a great time. We walk in and be like, ooh, it's hot in here, but we're still gonna talk and be okay for a while before it's like, all right, man, I'm getting pretty hot in here. Like we kind of need to get out.
Yeah.
But with the water, the second you get in there, it's like
Game on.
And your body knows it, and even getting into the water, like those 4 walls take place of like, all right, I know what I'm up against. Once you've done it, you know what to expect, you know what to feel. Hey, this one's below 40 degrees, this one's around 50, like you know what you're up against. So you have that first decision of getting in, you have the second decision of having to step into it, the third decision of total immersion, submersion, and then the 4th one of having to pass through what, when your body's telling you to kind of get out. I don't go through those kind of walls, certainly not in that as dramatic succession as I do with cold water.
Yeah, it's unique. One of the things we talked a little bit about this during Freezing for a Reason that I love about cold water, and it actually kind of goes back to your question about advice for a first timer, because it is so mental, that's one thing that I like to share with people is the perspective that when you and I get in cold water, our cold receptors in our skin are sending the same information to our brain. We're feeling the same sensation, and it's really our opportunity to assign the meaning to that sensation. So it's a choice. You can decide, oh, this is really cold and uncomfortable, I kind of want to get out. Or you could get in there and choose to be like, oh, this is refreshing. I feel great. I feel alive, which is the choice I try to make. And but I'm not even preaching to myself. Like I truly actually do love it, but not everybody loves it. You could kind of look at it that way and feel good about it.
Sick, Scared, and Stupid is brought to you by Life Like Us, a brand dedicated to empowering individuals to reclaim their health, strength, and clarity in a world that often profits from confusion and compromise. Life Like Us believes in the power of self-determination and the pursuit of personal excellence. Their mission is to inspire a return to natural, unaltered lifestyles that support health the way nature intended. Each product is designed and produced proudly in the USA, using only the highest quality materials to share a meaningful message. By choosing Life Like Us, you're not just purchasing apparel. You're joining a movement that values discipline, self-actualization, and the courage to take control of your health. Visit thelifelikeus.com to explore the full collection and become part of a community dedicated to clarity, strength, and truth. Yeah, so you're a little delusional too. No,
there you
kidding.
Go. There you go.
But yeah, pain, or the expression or interpretation of pain is subjective, right? It's just a message. The sensation is a message, and whether we interpret that as pain, it's kind of up to us to say that, right? Like I used to laugh a lot of times when I would get tattooed, because it was my way of dealing with the pain and kind of just like rechanneling the message. So rather than being like, oh, this really freaking hurts, I'd be like, oh yeah, whoa, that's good. Oh yeah, like just I would shift kind of my mindset and how I was interpreting that message.
Right.
Now, is that delusional? I don't think it's delusional. I think it's just how you choose to perceive the message or interpret the pain. Mm-hmm. So for you, talking about that, I think is very similar. Like when I get into the water and maybe advise people, kind of guide them the same way, like what to expect, what to do, I say, it's like in some ways it's like smashing your finger in a door, which people are like, well, that's a terrible metaphor to hear, but like when you do it, it hurts a lot at that moment, but then right away, within a few shakes and a couple of breaths, it starts to dissipate.
Yeah.
And it throbs, and you're like, God damn, that hurt. Like, but within a few 30 seconds, you're like, I'm good. That moment really hurt.
Yeah.
Getting into the water, you go from 0 to 9 or 0 to 9.5 immediately.
Yeah.
But it never goes to 9.6.
Mm-hmm.
It never goes to 9.7. Maybe you go from 0 to 9, 0 to 9.5 right away, and then it's just like, just hold it. It's just right there. It's not going any further. It's not getting any worse, but it's going to be here for a minute or two. I don't know. Like, it's going to be there for a little bit. But then slowly but surely, with good diaphragmatic, long, belly breath inhalations, hold a little bit at the top and have a nice long exhale, really good cyclic breathing. That 9.5 slowly but surely tapers, and it's 9.4, 9.3, 2, 1, 0, and then you're in the 8s, and then before you know it, you're like, all right, I'm kind of getting better. But it never goes past that limit.
Yeah.
It goes from 0 to 9, 0 to 9.5 right away, but it never takes you past that. Would you say it's similar to you?
Definitely. Yeah, it never gets easy
to
do it.
Right.
But the part of the medical beauty in what you described as an experience is that when you get in, because you do just go to 9.5 immediately with the cold water, it initiates the cold shock response. And that kicks off a chemical cascade that does wonders for the body and mind. To get into it a little bit, essentially, you're in the water and the cold receptors in your skin immediately pick up on the intensity of it. And it's a little bit of a fight or flight type response, because one of the first things that happens is you have a release of epinephrine or adrenaline. Yeah. And then the hypothalamus is trying to, create homeostasis, and it says, we're now going to put norepinephrine to balance it out. And it sends a big dose of norepinephrine into your system, which is kind of hard to replicate. And when that happens, norepinephrine does a bunch of good things. One of the things it does is activates your brown fat cells. We all have brown fat. Babies have a bunch of it on the back of their neck, their shoulders, and as we get older, we kind of lose it. But it's actually the good kind of fat that is very metabolically healthy. It's a way of us using energy. And so when you're in the cold, the body does, through this pathway of using norepinephrine to activate the brown fat, it's trying to warm you back up, and it over time and consistency, it builds up more and more of this. And one of the reasons why people say brown fat's good for your metabolism, it's good for your health. One of the mechanisms of action is that when it gets activated, it requires a fuel source. And the fuel source that it uses is glucose. So it just grabs glucose out of your bloodstream and uses it as fuel and burns it to activate itself, which is really interesting for all people, but especially for people that deal with like type 2 diabetes or high blood sugar, because it's a way of lowering your blood sugar that's agnostic to insulin and the pancreas. So you don't have to have an overactivation of that to push the glucose cells into the muscle cells. It just burns it like through a totally different method. So I think that's kind of one of the, people don't know what's happening when they get in there. They just know they feel good after, because you do get dopamine, oxytocin, you get a lot of the feel good stuff. But there's also things that are really good for your, there's studies that show, probably mainly because of this way of action, people losing weight. I did a whole video on fat loss in cold plunge.
Well, just like when you were, first of all, fantastic explanation. I'm so glad you talked about the contrast of epinephrine, norepinephrine. And yeah, trying to do that exogenously or environmentally, car crash, you know, immediate or imminent bodily harm, mortal danger, not something as controlled and essentially as calm and therapeutic as this would be. So to be able to, you know, trigger that same mechanism of action, I love that you use that term, like we're getting really medical and scientific now with the right buzzwords, is awesome, because that's a manipulation of something that typically takes fight or flight. So, you know, activation of autonomic, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous systems. Obviously our alleged inability to regulate the autonomic nervous system, but in here, kind of manipulation of the vagus nerve and what people are able to do as far as in maintaining resolve and calmness, and even people like, you know, Wim Hof, who can raise their body temperature when exposed to certain types of extreme cold and lower it in response to heat, would suggest that the autonomic nervous system can actually be manipulated by the conscious mind, which is, you know, another place to go into, but still, the fact that just by simply getting into cold water, you're able to get and trigger these benefits is freaking miraculous. Not miraculous, it's just amazing the ability that the human body has. And when you talk about brown fat, love this conversation, because it's very true about it being able to pull glucose and utilize essentially innate or inactive glucose that's shelved or stagnant, that can be repurposed and created by you by way of this pathway. In contrast to white fat, so brown fat I like to think of as like our little vest around our trunk, right? So above the hip sockets, within the shoulder sockets, and essentially like this little vest. And we can either make good use of that vest by keeping it active and used regularly, or otherwise it will turn into intramuscular white or bad fat if it doesn't go activated. Like you said, the infants have a very good amount of brown fat, so yeah, keeping them, that's why they're able to essentially keep warm by themselves, because they're babies and they have all their baby fat. Well, for us, we can make use of that baby fat by doing stuff like this. And it can be very, very, very healthy. That's why when people see you or like me get into the water and they're like, how are these guys doing that? You're so lean, man. Like, how do you do it? It's like, because the fat that is encapsulating your organs, essentially within that trunk, your little vest, I call it the seal blubber vest, is really, really, really warm, because it's very, very, very densely insulated. Whereas intramuscular fat, our marbling within us, it's all over the body, but that fat is not necessarily healthy per se, and its ability to insulate is not the same as what this is, especially when it encapsulates our absolute core organs. So being able to turn that on by sourcing all that glucose, like you said, and just having this warm. Sure, our fingertips and our extremities get cold, and for me, that's usually always the first place to be like, this is, I feel great in here, but man, my freaking toes and my, you know, this is killing me. But it's just amazing what the body can do, and people think it's miraculous. I'm like, no, that's just being human.
That was deep.
Well, I don't know how to follow yours. Yours is great.
That's just being human. I love it. We're capable of so much more than we think.
Yeah, man. And to do something so simple like that, right? Like I learned so much about myself. because of this. And this is still new to me. I've only been doing it now for, I guess, like 5 or 6 years. But to think all the time preceding that of where I was, going to challenge myself, whether it's with endurance or physical activity, exercise, other types of places to test my resilience and fortitude and leadership skill, and just overall mental self-discipline and resilience. Again, that's kind of the most typical buzzword to use for it. But it's like now, this is something that's so natural, because where does cold water exist in the natural world? In a lot of places, right? When the fad for liquid nitrogen and what's the cryotherapy, right? Spot or general, it's really cool, but like, where does that exist naturally?
Right.
Nowhere.
Right.
Saunas and sauna-like environments can exist naturally, depending on caves and certain types of insulated dwellings. Yeah. Sure. But like cold water's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And cold water immersion is everywhere.
Yeah.
So like as nouveau as this is, and seemingly like a hot trend, it's like, dude, this is about as old world, old school as it gets.
Yeah.
And to be able to tap into those benefits, these are like innate, instinctual aspects of a human being that we're just going, oh my God, this is amazing. It's like, guess what? Drugs do the same thing. Different types of drugs turn on those same dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, for sure, right? Epinephrine, norepinephrine, for sure. But doing this naturally and being able to call on it whenever we want, but it's only to our benefits. I mean, dude, I was hooked from day one, and even now, every time it's not easy.
Yeah.
Every time I still got to earn it, which I think kind of makes it the real miracle about it. It's like never is it giving to you.
Sure.
Given to you. It's always giving to you, but every single time you have to earn it.
You have to earn it. That's great. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, one of my good friends, he's an ultra runner. There's only some people in your life that you meet that are on the level of self-punishment and pushing themselves and just really doing uncomfortable things with, he's done Leadville twice. He's,
amazing. Big run in Colorado for those that don't know.
Yeah. He's done ultras, 200-mile plus runs. I mean, 3 days, running. And he does cold plunge religiously. He actually has a Fjord Cold Plunge. And he talked about to me one time how he goes to it deliberately because it's his opportunity to condition himself for other stressors that come to him in life. He's like, man, when I'm in life in general, or if I'm on a hard run, stressors are gonna come at you. I wanna be ready to meet them right where they're at. I don't have to receive it and react. I'm mentally kind of already in the right mind state to stay a little bit calmer, just a little bit calmer, you know? And I think that's pretty cool.
Oh my God, talking about hormesis and hormetic stress, and exactly what contrast therapy is, where too little of, there's no real effect, it's quite inert. Too much of can be deadly. Right?
Yeah.
Too much heat, obviously we can die.
Yep.
Too much cold, we can die. But this perfect right amount is tremendously beneficial, right? To where the X and Y axes, as far as I should say slope, right? I'm thinking about like a demand curve, where that demand curve and supply curve are so close to each other, meaning whatever differences take place, they're tremendously effective. But then once they separate, the change occurs, or rather the lack of change occurs. And with hormetic stress and with cold water immersion especially, it's like, dude, finding that right amount absolutely prepares you for other things in life. So whether it's the ultra runner going through those difficult circumstances, because when you put yourself consciously seeking suffering for personal growth, if you live in a world of very narrow-sided stress tolerance, anything that hits those walls is going to really rattle your cage. It's going to make you very uncomfortable. But anytime you can expand that by way of challenging yourself, doesn't always have to be physical, of course not, but any way that you can expand that stress tolerance allows you to have a new sense of understanding of being able to operate within those realms, right? So now when tough things happen, because life is going to be spontaneous, you're going to be unprepared, it's going to be surprising, it's not going to come when it's the perfect day outside and you got all the right situations and environmental perfection. No, it's going to be when you're not prepared, when it's unexpected, when it's untimely, inconvenient. But being ready, or having a sense of readiness by way of training, is a lot different. It makes you more prepared. It gives you a competitive advantage, right? Before you know it's coming. So
does.
I love the phrase, train hard, live easy. Because if you do train hard, you can live maybe not easy, but easier.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's going to make life easy, because life is only and always going to get hard and harder, right? Like, you've dealt with tragedy, you've dealt with difficulty in your life. Well, guess what? There's going to be more.
Sure.
Me too. You know, hopefully not worse than what we've already had to see, but probably. You know, so having to be able to face those things. Not to say that I need to go through a freaking screenplay of like, I need to watch somebody get their head chopped off, I need to see somebody get killed. No, but being able to do tough things keeps this parameter of stress tolerance and reactive like sense of, you know, stress management better. I'm better attuned for it. So if I train hard, I can live easy. And so to train hard equates to life being a little bit easier.
I really like that.
And this is just another one of those ways to do that.
I really like that. I was with some friends. We're doing a cold plunge out here the other day, and it was raining. You know, I thought, I don't know how they're going to react to this. I love the rain, and they loved it too. They're like, man, if it's not raining, you're not training.
yeah, I love that. That's well, any reason to up the ante as far as in the difficulty. It's not always about like that it's got to be harder or that it's got to be more extreme. But like, if you can see, kind of like what you're talking about, how you phrased the challenge of things. If you can see it as opportunity and not as misery. If you can see the sensation of this water hitting the cold water hitting your skin, not as pain, but as activation of life. And like, hey, I'm alive. Like, this is cool. Yes, it's painful. Like, but just choose to see it differently.
Yes.
You know, I'm feeling those pins and needles too. It feels like shards of glass to me too. It feels like fucking knives going into my feet too.
Right.
I'm shivering right there with you.
Yeah.
Like, but if you can project like, hey man, like, it's pretty awesome that my body is doing what it's supposed to do.
Yes.
Like, I'm so fortunate that it's reacting. It's not dead.
Right.
It's not, hey, my right hand's working, but my left hand's not. Well, that'd be a good message too, because it'd be like, we got a problem over here.
Yeah.
But like, to be able to see that as opportunity is a big differentiator, you know, between people and personalities and mindsets. And I use a metaphor of climbers. We're standing at the bottom of a huge mountain. We're looking up this face, and I go, oh my God, dude, how are we gonna get up there, Steven? And you go, Jake, you know how awesome it's gonna look from the top of this freaking thing? I'm like, oh God, this guy. But how are we gonna get up there? Like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
It's not saying to be reckless, but it's just saying like, it's seeing the potential, the possibility, having the dream, having the belief and possibility that this is an opportunity. What this represents, this is a mountain, but it's something we can do together. And it's not about, I don't know how we're gonna get up there. It's like, dude, you know how amazing it's gonna look from the top?
Right.
Same thing here. It's like, okay, this is painful. This is, it's not where I wanna be, but it's like, hey man, embrace it. Make it something that maybe you don't think it is, but something you want it to be for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You're getting me fired up to buy a cold plunge. I want to try this cold water thing you're talking about.
I can speak for it. It works wonders. So like, you know, I know you're a busy guy, man, and you got better things to do than talk with me on a Tuesday night. But
no way.
Where do you go? Like, where do you take Fjord from here? Like, you're serving up a lot of the Austin world and the Hill Country and Texas, and I know you got clients all over the country now. But like, where does this go? Like, what's the main goal, the main why to keeping you going and to expand and do whatnot with your business?
Yeah, we certainly have reached a place in the business now where I feel like a lot of the behind the scenes stuff is kind of figured out. I've got a great teammate, Annalie, who's been working with me for probably 4 or 5 months now, and that's been absolutely huge. Getting the right people on board and getting great, passionate teammates. They care about the company, they care about the brand, and they take initiative. So I'm really excited. I feel like we're positioned at this point for an inflection point of growth. So we haven't done a tremendous amount of marketing, which has actually allowed us to be a profitable business without charging an even higher price point because our costs are so low. But we're going to, and I'm really excited about starting to push out a little further and doing a little bit more paid marketing, growing the business that way. We're also setting up an affiliate program, and we're trying to invite more people into an affiliate type of partnership to get people that are also passionate about it, selling it to people, getting a clip of commission, and we all win. And then we're also pushing a little bit more intentionally in B2B, reaching out to country clubs, golf courses, health clubs, stuff like that.
Nice.
So there's a lot of things we're working on right now. I should know next week, so I can't talk about it too much here, but there's an announcement of some business that we're hopefully will be next week if we want it, and that'll be really exciting here in Austin as well.
Speaking of branching out, I saw you at F1 race here. And from what I read, which is public information, so I'm not divulging anything that's sensitive, it was something about getting a driver in there, or like one of the drivers from one of the race teams.
It was a really cool opportunity.
I read the article. I was like,
really cool opportunity.
Okay, fancy. And hanging out with the fine people of the world, at F1.
Yeah. We had one of the drivers, one of the teams, the Toyota team, reached out to us and said, hey, some of these cars have AC in them. It's up to the team to decide if they want AC or not. And they're like, because of weight reasons, we decided not to have AC. And this race took place on a pretty hot day in Texas.
Yeah.
And they said, we're really interested in partnering with you and have you bring out a cold plunge, rent it from you, And that was a really cool opportunity. I never thought about.
Was it in August?
Yeah.
Right? I was like, Jesus, it was in August.
It was hot as hell. It was the Le Mans World Championship.
Yeah, it was hot as hell.
And so we brought him a cold plunge, and it was really cool. I got to go meet the driver, meet the team, and when I talked to the driver, I said, hey man, like, how are you using this? And I looked at the temperature. I wanted to know what he was doing, and he said, I'm keeping it at 59 degrees, and I go in for 5 minutes immediately before I drive to pre-cool my body. And then I drive, and as soon as I get out, I'm hot, and I go and get in and post-cool.
So like between legs, basically?
Yeah, so they have 3 drivers. So you imagine they're just trading off, and each of the drivers is hitting it before and after, before and after.
And not having AC in the vehicle for the added weight.
Yeah.
Dude, that's kind of wicked smart.
Pretty cool hack.
That's badass.
Yeah.
And he said he loved it? It worked well? I mean,
they were very, very happy. Yeah. Look forward to doing that again next year.
That's cool. I mean, of all the things, did you ever think that would be something of all, like, obviously affected positively many people's lives, influenced their personal health and benefits? Did you ever think of something like that would be on your radar?
No, they reached out to me, and I was like, oh, what a cool use case.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say that's got to be the coolest so far. And also random, unexpected kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost the end of the year. We're almost out of time. What do you have send off to people? Final words, last thoughts?
Yeah. I guess on the topic that we've been discussing, I just would encourage people to, if you haven't tried cold plunging, find somewhere to do it and give it a shot. Find a buddy that's done it before to walk you through it. Or DM me and I'll give you some advice.
Come to one of Steven's wellness days if you're in the area.
Yeah, actually,
and if you're not, travel here.
That's actually a good point. If you're in Austin, find us on Instagram at Fjord Cold Plunge and reach out. We have events here on a pretty regular basis, and they're a lot of fun, but also it's a great way to meet other people that are passionate about cold plunge, sauna, yoga, stuff like that.
You heard it from the man himself. Well, dude, I really appreciate the time tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, for everything. I never leave here with regret. I always leave here feeling much better than when I got here. And I was already feeling pretty good. So
yeah,
it's always a great time spending time with you, man. Really appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure, man. Thank you for letting me come on your show. I'm excited.
And likewise, I had to earn it, every minute of that, but it was worth every second. So for everybody else, stay tuned, not only for this episode, but for also the episode of Steven's show, Freezing for a Reason, that we shot today. That'll be really cool because we did 20 minutes in the cold plunge, talking, shivering, and yeah, so that'll be really interesting. But for everybody else, thank you all again for tuning in to another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'll have in the show notes where to connect with Steven and Fjord, all things Fjord, where to purchase, where to sign up for his wellness days here at his place. But for everybody else, thanks again for tuning in to Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'm your host, Jake Thomas. We'll see you next time. Cool, dude.
Yes.
That's awesome.